Thank you all so much for joining us today for How Hoosiers Can Benefit from Heat Pumps. I'm Kelly with your Citizens Action Coalition, joined by Kerwin Olson, also of CAC, and Dan with Energy Futures Group. We're very glad to have you both today. Real quick before we begin, a couple of housekeeping items. First and foremost, we will be doing a question and answer session at the end of the webinar. We're going to be using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. So if any questions come up as folks are presenting, feel free to type them into that box, but be patient with us because we'll wait to answer everything until the end of the webinar. The other housekeeping item I wanted to mention is that we will record this webinar and make both the webinar recording and the slides available to you all at the conclusion of the webinar. So thank you again so much for joining, and I will kick it to Kerwin to get us started.
Great. Thanks, Kelly, and thanks everybody for joining. I am Kerwin Olson, the Executive Director here at Citizens Action Coalition. I'm just going to go through some high-level, quick background on why we're here today, and then turn it over to the fabulous Dan Mellinger to educate us all on heat pumps. Yeah, just real quick, we're CAC, been around a long time, consumer and environmental advocacy organization, fighting on behalf of everyday Hoosiers at the Regulatory Commission and the State House and communities across the state, founded in 1974. So do the math. That makes 2024 our 50th anniversary, a moment of which we're very, very proud. And we work on a broad range of issues, largely known as the utility watchdog, but we work on energy policy, utility stuff, healthcare, pollution prevention, and some agriculture issues. Why we're here today. Everybody knows about the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, federal law passed not quite 2 years ago in August of 2022 that set aside nearly $400 billion for investments in clean energy in our country, with $8.8 billion allocated for home energy efficiency and electrification through two different programs, the Home Efficiency Rebates Program and the Home Electrification and Appliance Rebates Program. Indiana was allocated $182 million for those programs. That's going to be overseen by the Indiana Office of Energy Development. And they have hired a company known as Aegis as a outside third-party administrator to be a single point source for administration of the program. Those programs have a lot of eligible equipment available for rebates and incentives. I put electric heat pumps for cooling and heating at the top. We're very excited about the robust funding for that appliance, and look forward to hearing Dan talk about that. But also things like electric heat pump water heaters, electric heat pump clothes dryers, electric stoves, cooktop range ovens. You can see the whole host of available equipment and investments and improvements that can be made through one or both of these programs. Just real quickly, the home electrification and appliance rebates programs. First of all, the first bullet there is about area median income, and that's an important data point to understand with respect to these two programs, especially the home electrification and appliance rebates program, which is tailored toward, or rather targeted towards, low and moderate income communities. Households with incomes that are above 80% of area median income, but at the same time, the household income is below 150% of area median income, will be eligible for rebates for 50% of the costs of eligible projects up to a total of $14,000. Households with income below 80% of the area median income will be eligible for 100% of the costs up to $14,000 for the household. And another exciting component of this program is that it is available to multifamily and rental units, where in units, multifamily units where 50% of the households are below 150% of AMI, the rebates available will be 50% of the project costs up to $14,000 a unit. Now, in multifamily and rental housing, where more than 50% of the households collectively are below 80% of AMI, it will be the lesser of 100% of the project costs, or $14,000 per unit. So you can see the targeted audience or of this program is low income, moderate income households, and improving their quality of life and reducing their monthly energy costs and energy burden. The home efficiency rebates program, or the homes program, is available to all income levels. Households with income above 80% of AMI will qualify for 50% of the costs up to 2,000 or 50% of the costs up to 4,000, depending on the level of energy savings that will be achieved through the measures and equipment installed. And again, households with income below 80% of AMI will receive even more robust rebates, 80% of the costs up to $4,000, or for greater energy savings, 80% of costs up to $8,000. And as you can see, this program is also available to multifamily and rental housing units, again, distinguished by whether or not that is a low income multifamily rental housing where the rebates will be higher. And that again is where more than 50% of the households in that multifamily property are below 80% of AMI, and there are quite substantial rebates and incentives available to the owners of those properties that we hope will be taken advantage of. Just real quick on what's going on in Indiana and when we can expect these programs to be launched. I took this directly from the Indiana Office of Energy Development's website. There will be some links later on in this presentation to all of these websites that will be archived on our website. But as it is right now, they are developing the blueprint for the program. Sometime in Q3 of this year, they will be submitting the plan to DOE. DOE will review the application. Again, sometimes that can be a slow process, but it'll be in the hands of the DOE sometime in the Q3 of 2024, with hopefully approval of the application and preliminary funding being released later in Q3 of 2024, with a hopeful program launch by the end of the year in Q4 2024. So hopefully these rebates and these incentives will be available in Indiana before the end of the year. Quickly, as I said, the program is currently being developed by OED and their contractors. They are conducting in-person listening sessions. If folks have ideas or concerns or suggestions related to how these programs should work and flow. There was a session last week in Gary, but there are 3 in-person listening sessions coming up, one in Indianapolis, one in Evansville, one in Fort Wayne. Again, there will be a link to the OED website where all of that information is available and where you can register. We'd encourage people to attend those in-person listening sessions if you're available to do so. You can also submit a comment or a suggestion to OED directly on their website. There's the link for that. Again, we'll be sharing these slides, so no need to write that long link down, but you can submit comments and suggestions. And then they will finish it off with a virtual closing session, 6:30 p.m. on June 27th. I believe that would be probably prior to ultimately submitting the plan to DOE for their approval. And there also is a place on the OED website to sign up for updates on the home energy rebate program. You can get on that list and you'll get an email and update with what's going on and if there's anything that you can do. And again, here are just some resources that I put on here, which will be archived on our website. There's the OED landing page. They just updated their landing page, and kudos to them. It's very, very user-friendly with lots of information. That's the link there. DOE's landing page on the rebate program, the IRS landing page, and again, AMI, area median income, to determine what the area median income might be in your county or your metropolitan area. There's a website you can go to at the HUD website. Pick your state, pick your community, and it will tell you what the area median income is for your community. And again, just want to quickly, we're very involved with the utilities on their efficiency programs and wanted to share links to all of the utility efficiency programs that are available to customers of those utilities that we encourage consumers to take advantage of. And we believe that you'll be able to stack the rebates from the home energy rebate program with utility rebate program, but a lot of that stuff has yet to be determined. But don't forget about those incentives and those rebates, which are also available to customers of those utilities. And again, this will be archived on our website. Those links will be available. And with that, I'm going to turn over to our main event, our good friend, Dan Millinger from Energy Future Groups, who does a lot of work with CAC in this area, and we appreciate him being here today. So take it away, Dan.
Thank you, Karen. A lot of great information there. There's going to be a quiz on all of those facts and figures later that Kerwin had, so I hope you all were paying attention. I'm going to touch on some of that information as well. Let me get my slides up here. It is obviously complicated. There are a lot of eligibility criteria, a lot of different products that are going to be eligible for funding under the IRA. And thankfully, Indiana is a little bit ahead of the game. I'm going to talk about that eventually at the status of the Indiana application and some of the amounts that are going to be eligible for Indiana households to take advantage of some great opportunities. For those of you who I haven't had the opportunity to work with before in Indiana, my name is Dan Mellinger. I am a principal consultant at Energy Futures Group. I have the great pleasure of working with Kerwin, Jennifer Washburn, and the rest of the wonderful team from CAC on all things energy efficiency in Indiana. And that includes heat pumps, which is what we're here to talk about today. Very pleased to be here and look forward to covering many of these details for you. Hopefully we'll have some time at the end for questions. If you do have questions as I'm presenting, go ahead and type those into the Q&A pane and we'll try to get to those at the end. Before I get started, I wanted to provide a quick introduction to my company, Energy Futures Group. EFG is a clean energy consulting firm based in Vermont. We have staff located throughout the country. We provide expertise on a wide range of clean energy topics for clients throughout North America. And I mentioned that in Indiana, I support the CAC team on topics related to energy efficiency. And though I currently live and work in Vermont, my roots are in the Midwest. I'm a native Michigander, a Yooper, for those of you familiar with that term. And I have a lot of family in Indiana, mostly the Fort Wayne and Indianapolis areas. So my goal here today is to give you a foundational understanding of heat pumps, what they are, how they work, the different configurations that are available, and the economics of owning and operating a heat pump. And I'm going to be looking at those economics specifically for the state of Indiana. Heat pumps are getting a lot of attention, a lot of press, significantly in part due to the funding that's coming available through the Inflation Reduction Act. But even aside from the IRA, there's a lot of interest and adoption occurring. And with that occurs some misunderstanding, maybe even misinformation about what they can or cannot do. And I'm hoping to dispel some of those myths, share with you all of the information I have and know about heat pumps, and arm you with a better understanding. To start, I just want to get everyone on the same page of what the heck a heat pump is. What are we talking about? Heat pumps are a type of HVAC equipment that can efficiently provide heating and cooling to both homes and businesses. Most of my discussion here is going to focus on heat pumps for residential use, but they're applicable, very applicable to commercial uses as well. They can be used in almost any climate to keep your home at a comfortable temperature year-round. And instead of burning fossil fuels, making heat directly, like what you do with natural gas or propane, heat pumps use electricity to transfer heat between spaces. That is the most fundamental and important thing to understand about heat pumps. They don't generate heat, they move heat. In fact, they use the same basic technology as a refrigerator, which moves heat from inside the compartment to the air around it. And that's why if you stand near the refrigerator and it's running, you're going to feel hot air coming out of the back or underneath the refrigerator. The system inside the refrigerator is moving heat from inside the compartment to the air around it. And that's exactly what heat pumps do for space heating and space cooling. Unlike your refrigerator, which only works in one mode, cooling, heat pumps are reversible, meaning they can provide both heating and cooling for the space. And as you'll see, heat pumps can be up to 3 times more efficient than a traditional heating system. Heat pumps are often thought of as a new or emerging technology. That's often the way that they're categorized, but in reality, the technology has been in use for nearly 100 years. They've been gaining more interest and traction recently due to advances in performance, increased ability to operate in cold climates, cold temperatures, and general energy and climate awareness. Inverter-driven technology or variable speed technology, which is fundamentally used in the cold climate heat pumps, was introduced more recently. So at the bottom of this timeline, you can see in 2001, inverter-driven technology, which is a technology invented in Japan, was first introduced to the United States. And with that, the ability to operate in a wider range of temperatures became available, and that's part of the driving force behind the interest and adoption levels in heat pumps more recently. The heat pump sales track record is very reflective of an established, high-performing technology. And in fact, as you can see here, in 2022, heat pump sales meaningfully surpassed gas furnaces for the first time. And clearly, this is no longer a niche technology or an emerging technology. It's a well-established technology with a decades-long track record. Before I get too deep into heat pumps, I'd like to discuss the various ways that Hoosiers heat and cool their homes. Having this knowledge about existing heating and cooling systems is really fundamental to understanding what the opportunities are for heat pumps. So we're going to cover how Indiana homes heat and cool, and then we're going to come back to heat pumps in more detail. What you're seeing here is information that I pulled from the Energy Information Administration, or EIA, on heating system types installed in Indiana homes, covering both single-family and multifamily. Central furnaces are by far the most common system type, represented in more than 2 million homes. So chances are most of you, or many of you, will have a furnace in your home. Over 80% of homes have a furnace to provide their heating. Central furnaces distribute heated air through a network of ducts, and they're often installed in combination with a central air conditioner, using the same network of ducts to provide both heating and cooling. The central furnaces can be powered by natural gas, propane, or electricity. Next most common are heat pumps, in fact. It's a big drop-off, but still more than 6%, or approximately 170,000 homes, already use heat pumps. This is a non-trivial number of Hoosier homes that have already made the move to heat pumps, which means that there are experienced trades out there who have been working with heat pumps, distributors who have been selling heat pumps. This is not an entirely new technology to the Indiana market. The third most common system type is electric baseboard, or electric built-in units, as EIA refers to it here, in approximately 140,000 homes. And fourth are boilers. Now, I know that a Boilermaker refers to locomotives, but I was still surprised to see that boilers are installed in only 3% of Indiana homes. I'm assuming these homeowners must be Purdue fans. I can't imagine many IU fans would be excited about having a boiler in their basement. Heating systems, of course, require a source of energy, and it's not surprising to see that natural gas leads the way here in 65% of homes. Next is electricity, very prominent at 26% of homes, being used to power either electric furnaces or a form of electric resistance. That could be electric baseboard or some other built-in unit. And heat pumps are part of the electricity category. Notably, there's a higher rate of electricity used for heating in lower income homes. That's what the graph at the right is showing. The green area are the percentage of homes that use electricity for heating. And the lowest income homes, the vertical bar at the left, or column at the left, shows the highest percentage of electricity used for heating. And then if you dig into this, you come to learn or realize that almost all of this is electric resistance. which is the most expensive to operate and least efficient form of heating. Higher income homes, meanwhile, have a greater share of natural gas heating. Propane is the third most common fuel type for heating at 7% of homes. And after that, very few homes are heated by wood or fuel oil. These are the historical prices for the most common home heating fuels in Indiana, according to the EIA, the same agency that I was just citing for the home heating system statistics. Electricity is shown in green, natural gas in blue, and propane in orange. And all three fuel prices are in terms of dollar per million BTU. In order to allow for easy comparison across the fuel prices. In reality, if you were to look at your fuel bill for any one of these fuels, it's going to be in a different term, such as dollar per therm or CCF for natural gas, or gallons for propane, or kilowatt hours for electricity. But for comparison's sake, all three fuel types are shown here in dollars per million BTU. The chart shows that natural gas is the least expensive in terms of thermal energy content, BTU, and electricity is the most expensive. I'll be discussing later why heat pumps are economical despite using higher cost electricity. And the key is that they move heat rather than generating the heat directly from the fuel source. Propane in the middle is highly variable over time, and actually the volatility is even more pronounced, since what I'm showing here are annual averages, and propane prices change daily. So depending on the time that a homeowner would place an order for propane or lock in their price, the price could be dramatically different than these annual averages. If we put all three fuel prices, or all three fuels at the same starting point in 2000 and show their prices as percentage change over time, you can see that all three energy sources have roughly doubled in price since 2000. We're going to come back to these fuel price data when we discuss the heat pump economics a little bit later. Finally, a look at the cooling system installed in Indiana homes. Like furnaces, central air conditioning is installed in over 80% of homes. And notably, this category includes central heat pumps rather than being broken out separately like they were for heating systems. Window AC units provide cooling in roughly 14% of homes statewide. And this is another area that's strongly sensitive to income level. Lower income homes have a much higher rate of window AC, shown as the green shaded area on the graph at the right, in 31% of homes. Window units are the least expensive to install, but the most expensive form of cooling to operate. So now that you have a basic understanding of the various ways that Hoosiers heat and cool their homes, let's go back to heat pumps and get into the details of how they work. As I mentioned earlier, heat pumps can provide both heating and cooling. In heating mode, which is what the diagram is showing here, heat pumps move heat from the outside air into the indoor space. And this can occur even when it's very cold outside due to the thermodynamic properties of the refrigerant used inside of a heat pump. First, that refrigerant absorbs heat from the outside air, which can occur even at temperatures below zero. The refrigerant is then compressed, which concentrates the heat and forms a high pressure vapor. This superheated vapor is pumped inside the building and distributed into the warm air to increase the temperature of the space. After that heat is released inside, the now cooled refrigerant travels back outside, expands, and the process repeats. It absorbs the heat, compressed, sends back inside, and it moves in that cycle over and over again. By moving the refrigerant around, we're pumping heat energy in a useful direction, and that's where heat pumps get their name. And that's why the term heat pump applies to both cooling and heating. In heating mode, you're pumping heat from the outside to the inside. In cooling mode, you're pumping heat from the inside to the outside. It can be a little bit of a confusing name. Heat pump sounds like it only provides heating, when in reality it provides both heating and cooling. And the technology is just pumping the heat in different directions. So here's a look at cooling mode, which is when the cycle operates in reverse. That heat energy is first absorbed inside the home. The warmed fluid is pumped outside, where then it is compressed, superheated, and released to the atmosphere before traveling back inside to repeat the cycle. So the same cycle, just operating in two different directions, slightly more complicated than what I'm covering here. And in fact, this diagram shows many more of the components that exist within a heat pump. I'm not going to go into the details, and I'm not going to go into the mechanical details here. We can always come back to the slide later if someone has a technical question. But just quickly, while I'm on this slide, I want to note again that this refrigerant cycle diagram that you're seeing here for cooling mode on the left and heating mode on the right is very similar to your refrigerator, your existing air conditioning system. Heat pumps just use it in a slightly different fashion. And one of those keys is that it has a reversing valve. And you see that at the top. Let's see if you can see my mouse on the heating side. You see that right here. This reversing valve allows the system to operate in two different directions, providing both heating mode and cooling mode. There are four broad categories of heat pumps to be aware of. Most of our discussion is going to focus on air source heat pumps, which transfers heat to and from the outside air. Air to water systems also use the outside air as the source, but on the indoor side, it transfers that heat through a water loop. And usually that would be in something like a radiant floor heating system or a baseboard water system. Ground source heat pumps, also known as geothermal heat pumps, transfers heat to and from an underground source. It could be a well, it could just be earth underground, it could be a water source such as a lake. And lastly, heat pump water heaters transfer heat from the air around it into a water tank. I'm not going to be covering heat pump water heaters in detail here today, but I did want to include it here as one of the categories. One of the great benefits of heat pumps is their flexibility. There are numerous configurations to serve a variety of different needs and applications. The outdoor components shown here are responsible for absorbing and rejecting the heat. So everything you see here in the green boxes, all of these components are outside. And these can be a single fan or dual fan, those top, the boxes with the numbers 1 and 3, depending on the number of zones. So if you're heating or cooling just one zone, you might just have what box number 1 shows, an outdoor unit with a single fan. Multi-zone systems typically will have 2 fans on the outdoor unit. A central system will often look a lot like what you might be familiar with for a central air conditioning unit, the condenser that sits outside, shown in box number 5. For geothermal systems, you actually don't see anything outside. Everything is underground. So it would be a loop of some form underground or piping that's drilling down to a well. And lastly, the box on the right, number 6, is an air to water system. On the outside, it looks a lot like what you see for a multi-zone heat pump. Things vary on the inside for that system. So here are the components that would exist indoors. You can have a ductless wall-mounted unit shown in the lower left. This is called a head, which can be easily mounted in individual rooms or in small spaces, working with the mini split outdoor unit, box number 1. Central heat pumps send their conditioned air through ducted vents, exactly like a central furnace or AC. So what you see on the inside would be an air handler, which I'll show a picture of in a minute, and that feeds the network of ducts. For a ground source or geothermal system, you have an indoor unit that manages the pumping, and that sends a heated or cooled fluid into an air handler or pipe network for distribution. And finally, an air to water system would connect with a radiant floor or baseboard hydronic piping system, such as shown in number 9. So here are a few actual pictures of those components. The outdoor units shown on the left can be wall mounted or ground mounted. If you live in an area that receives snow, the unit has to be installed on a stand to provide clearance. That typically isn't the case for an air conditioning unit because it's not operating in the wintertime. So if snow is covering that AC unit, it's not a problem because it's not being used. But since a heat pump is providing both heating and cooling, you do have to make sure that it's up high enough to provide clearance from any snow. For a centrally ducted heat pump, the indoor air handler shown on the right, this tall unit here is an air handler, looks nearly identical to a furnace air handler. So if you have a furnace in your home that provides central heating and cooling, you're going to have something that looks a lot like that in your basement or your garage. For a ductless heat pump, refrigerant lines run to an indoor unit that's mounted on a wall, or it could be in the ceiling, or even low on the wall, sitting on the floor. Air source heat pumps come in two varieties, standard and cold climate. Standard heat pumps have been around the longest, and cold climate heat pumps are more recent development. And the cold climate models provide homeowners with the ability to use heat pumps in very low temperatures, down to as low as minus 22 degrees Fahrenheit. So with a cold climate model, it's unlikely that a home would need a secondary source of heating in Indiana's climate. In some climates, such as northern Michigan, Minnesota, you might be reaching that cold temperature, or maybe even temperatures colder than that, more than a handful of hours, and you would want or need a backup heating system. But in Indiana's climate, it's likely that a cold climate system could provide all of the heating needs throughout the winter season. As a real world example, my EFG office in Vermont has cold climate heat pumps without any source of backup heating. And of course, our winters in Vermont are much colder than Indiana, with a climate more similar to northern Michigan. Dual fuel systems pair an electric heat pump with a gas furnace to provide complete heating coverage across all temperatures. So these systems have controls to manage a switchover operation, and at a certain outdoor temperature, the primary heating responsibility switches over to the gas furnace. Just like with hybrid cars, dual fuel systems are a compromise between efficiency and temperature range. With a hybrid car, the parallel would be driving range. And so it's a compromise, and in some situations, a dual fuel or hybrid system can make sense depending on the climate that you live in. So let's take a look at some of the heat pump benefits, which I've already touched on some of these in the course of introducing heat pumps, but I want to dive in a little bit deeper into some of these. Energy efficiency is the most prominent benefit, and the one that we hear a lot about. When evaluating efficiency, we look at the heat energy delivered in BTUs divided by the energy input, also in BTUs. By looking at it in this way, we get the value in percentage terms, and we can perform this calculation for any fuel type just by converting that fuel energy into BTUs. So starting with electric furnaces, they're 100% efficient since all the energy input is converted into usable heat. On the surface, that sounds pretty good, but later on when we look at the economics, you will understand why that's not so good. Next are natural gas and propane furnaces, which are between 80 and 98% efficient. Now with these systems, there's always some amount of energy that's lost due to the system exhaust. That exhaust has heat energy in it that's going to be lost to the outside, and that results in an efficiency penalty. The minimum standard of 80% was established quite a long time ago in the 1970s, and most furnaces sold today are around 90% efficient, 90, 92% efficient. And it's possible to get furnaces that are 95 to 98% efficient, which means very little energy is being lost in the exhaust. And those are the types of systems that can be directly vented through the wall. Things get much more interesting in terms of efficiency when we look at heat pumps. Seasonal efficiencies of 276% are common and could be as high as 380%. These efficiency levels that I'm showing here The gray, the lowest efficiency, is based on the minimum qualification criteria among the utilities in Indiana. The green, 276%, is based on the average of Energy Star qualified models, and the blue is the highest performing Energy Star qualified model. Now, seeing a figure like 276% efficient can be confusing. Generally, we think of maximum efficiency at 100%. So how can something be more than 100% efficient? And for this, we have to remember that heat pumps transfer the heat rather than generating it. And if you look at that formula for efficiency, if we can deliver more heat by transferring it, then the energy content that it takes to operate the system, we can result in efficiencies that are very high, such as we're seeing here. So what this is saying is for that green system, it's delivering 2.76 units of heat, transferring 2.76 units of heat for every 1 unit of electric energy input. So this is the key to why and how heat pumps have such a significant gain in efficiency. And this is going to have a really important effect on the system economics, which I'll be looking at in just a bit. There are other energy-related benefits beyond efficiency. In comparison to heating fuels, to other fuels like electric resistance or propane, heat pumps can deliver significant cost savings. Furthermore, the electric rates tend to be more stable over time, unlike fuels, and moving to electricity can provide an emissions benefit, especially as the grid decarbonizes over time. I mentioned the flexibility benefits already, such as the ability to provide both heating and cooling, and the variety of configurations available. And in terms of comfort, heat pumps are whisper quiet. In fact, this is one of the first things I noticed after installing heat pumps in my home, is that you can barely hear them operate, both inside and outside. We previously used window units for air conditioning, which of course are very loud inside and out. And now all of that noise is gone. There are also some comfort benefits in terms of very consistent temperatures and their excellent ability to dehumidify. As with any technology, there are several things to be aware of when it comes to installing and operating heat pumps. The most common issue you've probably heard is that heat pumps don't work in the cold. And there is indeed a low temperature limit to heat pump operation, but many cold climate models, as I already mentioned, can deliver full capacity down to -5, and some can even achieve full output in temperatures as cold as -22 degrees Fahrenheit. Temperatures below these extremes are rarely observed in Indiana. The chart that I'm showing here is from a heat pump manufacturer, Mitsubishi, and it's showing the capacity or output across a range of cold temperatures. For a standard heat pump shown in gray, the capacity starts to decline at around 35 degrees Fahrenheit. The cold climate models, meanwhile, maintain full capacity down to a +5 Fahrenheit for the system shown in blue, or -5 degrees Fahrenheit for the system shown in red. And below these temperatures, the output starts to decline. So backup heating may be necessary depending on the situation. Certainly, if you're installing standard heat pumps, you're going to want a backup heat source. Or if you're installing cold climate heat pumps in an area where you expect temperatures to exceed the cold temperature rating of the heat pump, then a backup system would be needed. And if a heat pump isn't properly sized, then a backup system is also necessary. Backup heating can be provided by an existing furnace or even an electric resistance coil. Using electric resistance for heating generally is frowned upon because of the expense, but in this application as a backup system with a cold climate heat pump, it would only be operating a few hours per year, and therefore the expense wouldn't be very significant. Finally, a quick note that gas heat pumps are another technology out there, heat pumps that are almost entirely operating on natural gas. And these are systems that I don't recommend. They do provide a marginal efficiency gain over a furnace. But if you're investing in heat pump technology, it's far more beneficial to install a fully electric version than a gas heat pump. The efficiencies of an electric heat pump far exceed what can be delivered in a gas heat pump. You don't need to take my word about it for cold weather performance. There are many studies out there that look at this, and organizations such as what I'm showing here that have analyzed or reported on cold weather performance. The efficiency Maine example on the left is particularly telling, given the severity of Maine winters, and the fact that Maine customers have now installed over 140,000 heat pumps in that state over the past decade. So here's a very cold state with a lot of experience, a lot of homeowners, contractors, trade allies with experience with this technology, and it's only gaining momentum. It's not slowing down at all in the state of Maine. Consumer Reports notes the importance of a proper installation, and to that I would add proper equipment selection, such as model selection and sizing. Working with a contractor on both of those details is really important to maximize the performance of a heat pump system. Many of us use thermostats that have a setback schedule to reduce space temperatures overnight or when the house is empty. But with heat pumps, it's best to set them and leave them other than for multi-day absences. And this is because heat pumps need to work harder to recover from a deep setback. And the efficiency penalty during this recovery negates any gains from the setback if it's only for a few hours. As with any piece of HVAC equipment, regular maintenance is required, such as filter cleaning and annual checkups. Traditional furnaces operate with very hot bursts of air. You hear the furnace kick on. You might feel that hot air moving through the vents. And heat pumps, meanwhile, operate at a lower temperature with generally lower fan speeds to more steadily heat the air. As a result, the air coming out of the vent may not feel quite as warm as expected, even though the space temperature is being maintained. And as I already mentioned, at very low temperatures, the temperature of the air coming out of a heat pump or the ductwork would start to droop unless a backup heating system is in place. Weatherization has nothing to do with heat pumps directly, but the benefits can really compound when combining a weatherized home with heat pumps. If done before a heat pump project, the homeowner can lower the equipment cost since a heat pump can be right-sized to the new, more efficient heating load. And once the heat pump is installed, the operation cost is then even lower. Weatherization can also reduce or perhaps even eliminate the need for backup heating system. So weatherization before or during the time of a heat pump project is always something that I recommend. All right, let's talk dollars and cents, the economics of heat pumps. First, I want to go back to the fuel price history for electricity, natural gas, and propane. Now, remember that these prices are in dollar per million BTU, represent the cost of energy delivered to the home. But we haven't yet considered the efficiency of the system. This is just at the point of delivery. To understand the operational cost, we need to factor in the efficiency of the different heating systems. Recall that electric furnaces are 100% efficient, or any form of electric heating is 100% efficient. Natural gas and propane are around 90% efficient, and an average heat pump is 276% efficient. When we incorporate these efficiencies with the fuel prices, now we can see and compare the operational costs across different fuel types and systems. So first, notice the spread that exists between an electric furnace, shown in light blue, and a heat pump, shown in green. These are two systems, both using electricity, the same energy source, but the heat pump efficiency provides a significant economic advantage. The electric resistance system is generating heat directly from that electricity, where the heat pump is using the electric energy to move heat. And it provides the economic advantage, the significant advantage over an electric furnace or electric baseboard. In fact, the heat pump efficiency allows it to be competitive economically with natural gas, shown in dark blue. A propane furnace in orange in the middle is more expensive and highly volatile over time. So this chart demonstrates how heat pumps can provide low cost and stable heating for Indiana homes. On an annual basis, natural gas furnaces cost just under $700 to operate, and heat pumps cost just over $800. Propane is roughly twice as expensive at over $1,500 per year, and electric furnaces or electric baseboard heating systems are roughly 3 times expensive to operate at $2,200. This analysis is based on heating costs only. If we were to include air conditioning, heat pumps would be the lowest total operational cost since most heat pumps are highly efficient at cooling. Now that we understand the cost to operate these different systems, a few scenarios become clear winners for heat pumps. First, heat pumps provide a huge savings potential versus electric resistance heating. The same is true for propane heating, which is typically a furnace. Once we get into natural gas, the opportunity becomes more situational. If a home has a furnace or central AC that's near the end of its life and will soon need to be replaced, it can make sense to move to a heat pump. Or if a home is heating and investing in new air conditioning, a heat pump can be installed to provide cooling and displace some of that heating. Now, these opportunity buckets may seem nuanced and potentially niche, but as it turns out, a huge number of Indiana homes falls into these categories. First, the clear opportunities are those with electric and propane heating. And this is more than a quarter of Indiana homes, almost 700,000, which have electric resistance or propane as their primary heat source. These homes will have a huge economic benefit in switching to heat pumps. Next are the homes that are heating and cooling. Next are the homes with heating and cooling equipment that is older than 15 years and will need to be replaced soon. This is another 500,000 homes, that first row in the light blue table. 500,000 homes have natural gas heating or AC equipment that's at or near end of life. A catchphrase for these customers are, when it dies, electrify. There are also homes that heat with inefficient gas, room heaters, and homes where the primary cooling is window air conditioning units. So combined, these categories represent another quarter of Hoosier homes. And in total, more than half of the homes in Indiana would have an economic opportunity in converting to heat pumps. What's left are the homes that heat with natural gas equipment that isn't yet near replacement age, homes that already have heat pumps, and homes that heat with wood. So while customers in these categories may not realize immediate economic benefit by upgrading to heat pump, they may have other motivations to do so, such as price stability, flexibility, climate, or energy reasons. To wrap up, I want to highlight a few resources that you should be aware of when it comes to heat pumps. First are the utility incentives that are available from the 5 Indiana investor-owned utilities. Kerwin provided the links to each of these programs earlier, and I have a little bit more detail here on the rebate amounts that you can expect for a heat pump. As you can see, the rebate amounts vary quite a bit, and it's always important to confirm these amounts with the utility and to confirm that the equipment that you're evaluating matches the performance specifications listed by the utility. There are 2 utilities on this list, CenterPoint and I&M, that offer instant or sometimes called midstream rebates at the point of purchase. So this means the contractor price will already reflect the rebate discount when a homeowner pays for the project. Federal tax incentives are available right now through the Inflation Reduction Act, which can reduce the cost of a heat pump or weatherization project by up to 30%. And these are available now. The big funding that's coming to Indiana that Kerwin mentioned, and I'm going to talk about next, the $182 million, that has nothing to do with this form of the Inflation Reduction Act. These are tax credits that are available now. There are no income eligibility limits, though a homeowner does need to have a tax liability to take advantage of these credits. And again, the credits for a heat pump are 30% of the cost, up to $2,000. And it's per year. These can be renewed each year. So you could do a heat pump project in 1 year, a heat pump water heater project in the next year, and be eligible for up to $2,000 each year. The bigger component of funding is in the form of the home energy rebates. Indiana is one of the leaders here. It's one of the first states to complete their application for home energy rebate funding. There are now 17 states. Indiana submitted their initial application back in March, and the funding would total $181,891,000 and change. This is a significant funding opportunity that's coming to Indiana and states everywhere. The amounts that will be available once approved could be as high as $8,000 per unit for heat pumps or whole home upgrades, up to $1,750 for heat pump water heaters. There are income eligibility limits, which Kerwin mentioned, and I have shown here on the slide as well. And each of these are based on the AMI, area median income. So stay tuned on this. Hopefully we'll be learning more details about the eligibility and availability of these programs later this year. And finally, want to make you aware of a resource from Rewiring America called the Personal Electrification Planner. This is a tool that can guide homeowners through the process of upgrading to heat pumps and other electrification measures. In this example, I chose my uncle's house in Goshen, put in a few details about the house, and it provides you some estimates of what it would cost to do an audit, to install a heat pump and weatherization, if your home needs pre-wiring, what that cost might run. I could only fit so much on the screen here. There's actually a long list of project ideas and estimates around cost. So this is a really helpful resource to be available, to be aware of. A few additional resources, links to additional resources, such as some consumer and installer education, a sizing tool. Michigan has a really great program called the Michigan Heat Pump Collaborative with educational materials. And then lastly, there at the bottom, IRA incentives will require heat pumps to qualify or to meet a certain performance level. And the organization that is listing those eligible products is called the Consortium for Energy Efficiency, or CEE. So there's a link here to the CEE qualified products list. So thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate the opportunity to present to you today. My hope is that you'll be leaving here with a greater understanding of heat pump technology, their applications, and the opportunities for Hoosier homes. So we have 5 minutes left for any questions that you would like me to address, Kelly.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dan. And everyone, rest assured, if we do not answer your question in the next 5 minutes, I've made notes and we'll be sure to follow up with resources that are available after the fact. Okay. I think one thing, Dan, do you have an estimate of how many houses could be eligible for the 100% rebate level here in Indiana?
Great question. I have not looked into those figures. There's a couple of ways to look at it. One is we can estimate how many houses would be eligible based on AMI. That's an analysis that is possible to do using the data for area median income that Kerwin shared. Another way to look at it is how far will that funding last if you figure the average home is going to be eligible for 100% funding up to $8,000. You do some division and you can estimate how many homes could potentially be eligible for heat pumps and weatherization. That's not a calculation I've done yet, though.
Thank you so much, Dan. Kerwin, are incomes based on the 2023 tax returns when we look at eligibility for the program?
Well, hopefully there won't be too much income verification. There will have to be in certain instances, but being consumer advocates that we are, we always advocate for, single point qualification, meaning if you're qualified for free and reduced lunch, qualified for SNAP, qualified for some other income tested program, that all you'll need to qualify for those programs would be that enrollment letter or other. As far as this is all part of what OED is working through right now, as far as designing what these programs would look like. And I think if there are concerns about how that will be done, that would be something that you would ask or comment or suggest to OED, because there is concern sort of about privacy around income, who's going to be qualifying that income, And we certainly want to streamline that and make that as efficient as possible. So I don't know if they're going to use 2022, 2023, 2024. Usually it's the prior 12-month period that folks will need to display their income. But hopefully, again, we can just do single point of qualification. And with respect to Amy's question about number of households in Indiana, that's a hard question to say, but I'm guessing there's probably 500,000 to 600,000 households or so in Indiana that would fit into that income level. But again, many of those are renters, live in multifamily units. So some of that will depend upon those building owners sort of taking advantage of these programs. So that's something we'll have to work for as far as outreach and drive participation will go. So,
Okay. Thank you very much for that, Kerwin. And then our last question, we have so many folks, again, we will follow up afterwards, but Dan, we wanted to see if you know of any resources that are a convenient way for Spanish speakers to call and ask questions or receive support about rebates or the logistics of heat pumps.
Good question. I don't know the answer to that. It's not anything I've explored yet, unfortunately.
Sure. No, we will do some digging and we will follow up certainly afterwards with that question. And let's see if we've got.
I'm just peeking at the Q&A pane. One thing I do want to address, there was a question about refrigerants, which is a really important question since that's been in the news recently. A refrigerant is a form of a greenhouse gas, a very potent one, in fact, and any refrigerant system that leaks presents that risk. So during the installation, most manufacturers of heat pumps have a very safe and effective way of adding, or what's called charging, the system. It's important that the contractor be authorized or an approved installer for that equipment. And if they are, they've gone through training for how to properly charge the system. But once the refrigerant is in the system, and as long as that system is maintained and tuned annually, there would be no issue or risk. Eventually, we do anticipate heat pumps and a variety of different refrigerant systems using low global warming potential refrigerants, but right now heat pumps don't fall into that category.
Thank you so much, Dan. And we are at time. So many good questions, such good information presented today. Dan, we can't thank you enough. Kerwin, thank you for getting the ball rolling and laying out what we can expect here in Indiana. Again, folks, we really appreciate your time today. And again, these slides and the recording will be emailed out to you shortly. Thank you all so much for joining today.
Thank you.
thanks.